What a great time of year. As one song says, a most wonderful time of the year. And we've been hearing some amazing music this morning with the praise team and the choir. Oh, good music. And it's also a difficult time of the year when it's hard to live up to expectations. And there's that image that we all have to be from a perfect life situation and a perfect family. And yet we know there are empty chairs and some empty hearts. So how are you doing with getting through this season? Oh, today we're not taking a look at the entire Advent season, but I do want us to focus on where God connects with our lives. That's been the theme we've used for Advent this year. God intersects with our human lives. Well, sometimes it's hard to see where that intersection is occurring. Sometimes there are situations that are a little more obvious than others. Sometimes even people like me and you can see the intersection, such as when we look at Mary, we can tell that God's life and Mary's life intersected. So what was happening with Mary? Well, I want us to start off with a definition of what is a humble person. One definition: humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. Now, when I was trying to think of this, or trying to find the source of this definition, it's not that easy. It's credited to C.S. Lewis, but probably not C.S. Lewis. Probably Rick Warren from A Pastor with a Purpose-Driven Life credit. But listen to what C.S. Lewis did say that might fit Mary even better. A person will not be thinking about humility. They will not be thinking about themselves at all. Either way, Mary's words from this scripture, what we call Mary's Magnificat, come out of her sense of humbleness and her sense of awareness of the world. Oh, we recognize Mary and remember her today for being able to see that connection between human and God, especially in the time when she was told that she would give birth to Jesus. Now, the scripture that you heard read today, well, those words probably sound very familiar to you. Oh, and at least the second part, which was Mary's response, those words are words that have been said many other times. Those were words that were written in Isaiah for comfort to God's people who were in exile. They were also words that were said by Hannah when she gave birth to a long-awaited son, Samuel. If you remember, there's both 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel in the Old Testament, just to give you a little clue how to pursue that. So these words appeared those two times. And then for all of you who wonder if mothers have an influence on their children, these words that Mary said, well, it's very similar to the words that Jesus said during his first recorded sermon. That sermon in Nazareth when he said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." There's power to those words of Mary giving thanks and recognizing that God connected with her, that God was there with her. You'll hear these powerful words again later on at the close of the sermon as we sing them. But for now, I want us to look at how those words were not just said then, but they're lived out today. The first vignette. There's a Pastor Manning who traveled from South Carolina to be in Pittsburgh after 11 people were killed in a synagogue several months ago. You see, those 11 people were killed. They were shot because someone vented anger towards them. But why did Pastor Manning come? Pastor Manning is the pastor at Emmanuel African Episcopal Church, where 2 years earlier, 9 people were killed during a Bible study. They were targeted by a shooter who was white and racist against anyone with dark skin. Pastor Manning represents this Magnificat in our world. For Pastor Manning, like Mary, recognize that we are together in this world. An African American pastor and a predominantly white Jewish temple. We're together, living out God's message. Just like Mary knew that there were times to go and be with Elizabeth, so that they could both together recognize that their life and God had intersected in a similar way. Well, after that synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh, there was a report from another synagogue in San Francisco, according to the Christian Century. The San Francisco synagogue has been a target of both anti-Semitic and anti-sexual orientation attacks. There's been anxiety in that congregation, and they were wondering and fearful. But here's what happened. A Mennonite congregation also uses that same building on Sundays. And so Mennonites volunteered to stand vigil outside the building on Friday evenings. And this is the response from their rabbi: "I'll take 20 Mennonites over one armed security guard any day." Aren't you proud to know Mennonites? They're great protection and friends of many. You know, being Mary is a part of God's plan for the world. To be those bodies, those hands, those feet in action for the betterment of our world. Third vignette. Now just imagine you're here in Goshen. You are homeless. You have no place to sleep at night that is indoors with heat. And you're part of the 2 or 3 homeless camps that are around the city. And the camp, well, it's nothing like the images of a fun summer church camp. Not like that at all. But imagine, you hear this scripture. The scripture about God's care for the least of these. Even though you feel unworthy to show up Christmas Eve. This morning, it would have been seriously cold out there. And the reasons people are homeless, they're numerous, they're diverse, and 2 people sharing a tent may have very different reasons. And yet the town of Goshen responds. There's tokens given out by the police department to transport men to Elkhart Faith Mission. But one plan doesn't work for all. There's another group that spent time outside the courthouse. They wanted to make sure there was a bed for every homeless person. A bed for everyone who was homeless. You know, the best part for me is that people care. People care about those who are homeless. Those when there is no room in the inn. When mental health issues and physical health issues and interacting with other people becomes difficult. And yet Mary, in her words, recognized that even those in the tents, in the parks in Goshen, those poor and lonely, are a part of God's love. Our Messiah's mother, she wasn't narcissistic. She wasn't proud. She wasn't self-centered. She was a humble woman. Humble, aware that God's love had come to her, had intersected with her role in life, and that God cared about the poor and the lonely, and God's plan went far beyond that very moment. Part of the salvation plan for the entire world for all time. The words of Mary and the Magnificat live in us today. All who are homeless in Goshen. All who, like the Mennonites in San Francisco, care about their neighbors. All who, like the African American Methodist Episcopal pastor, who continue to work for justice in the entire world. Mary's words. May these be your words to inspire you to see and experience that intersection between God and you. Amen.